Hi, Tyria. Happy Friday, and welcome to Guild Chat. Thank you for spending some time with us today. I'm your host, Ruby, and we are going to be talking about the Skyscale today. I have I have a small friend that one of our dev guests brought me, so we can thank him here in a little bit. So we're going to talk about the Skyscale. We mentioned a few weeks ago that we were going to do a little bit deeper dive into the design and implementation of all parts of the Skyscale. So we are going to talk about that with 6 of our dev guests today. A couple things that I want to mention first. If you have somehow missed the forum post about updates on the acquisition, about updates on the collection, a couple notes. The mastery track was not supposed to be blocking Spirit Shard acquisition, so we hotfixed that, and that changes in now. It does not do that anymore. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the collections and the time gating on that. So in case you missed it again, there's a hotfix coming in on May 28th. We're going to reduce the time between collection tiers from 24 hours to 2 hours. That's the difference between one real world day and one Tyrian day. And you can also feed your Skyscale 4 times a day instead of 3, so that knocks some of that time off. In case you missed that, if you want to read a little bit more about that or talk about it with the rest of your community, you can check that out on the forums. So, with that said, those updates are incoming, and now we're going to have a chat with our first round of dev guests. Starting with Stephen, I do want to talk to you first and tell you congratulations for the Gauntlet last weekend.
Well, thank you so much. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, you guys did fantastic work. You, our community, really did a great job supporting us. ArenaNet ended up raising $1,240 for charity. Stephen was in the top 15 individual fundraisers out of the entire Gauntlet, so that was amazing.
Thank you so much, and thank you seriously. Like, people I don't know were donating to me because of the stream. So thank you for getting the chance to talk about it.
Very happy to. Do you want to talk a little bit about the event? We have a couple pictures from the event. Check you guys out.
Yay.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that day was like?
It was a rush. We got there a little bit early. Sat around, tried to get in a couple of quick games of Parade because that was one that we hadn't had a chance to try out beforehand. And it worked out pretty well, I think, for everybody else on the team. For my own part, Parade was not my strong suit. I think I scored like 35 and 40 in the 2 games, which would be great, except it's a low score wins game, and the other table mates were like at 10 and 12, so not quite so great. But I had much better luck in the trivia round, and then the last round they had this wonderful combination of carnival games and puzzle solving. And I am an inveterate puzzle solver, so I got to fiddle with pencil and paper whilst people were throwing balls at milk cans.
So you were like cracking your knuckles going, get out of the way, my time has come.
Pretty much that, exactly.
It's happening. Awesome. Well, congratulations. Thank you for all of the work that you did preparing for this event. And thank you, Tyria, for supporting us and helping us to support El Centro de la Raza. This was a super successful, super fun year for our first year participating.
It was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's talk Skyscale. I'm going to have each of you go down the line, introduce yourselves, what you do here at ArenaNet, and talk about what you worked on for the Skyscale.
I am Stephen Studnicki. I work as a content programmer, which is kind of a straddled role between programming and technical design. And I've just recently come to this role, and so as part of my spin-up on the design aspects of it, I worked with the primary content designer for the Skyscale, Lena, to implement some of the collections.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Joel?
Excuse me, goodness. That's my name. I'm Joel Helmick.
So
I'm
nice.
gameplay programmer. Worked on mostly movement stuff, general mechanics. I sort of inherited it a couple months into the design process as Elena was working on it and was like, oh, by the way, there's a lot of work to do, and we're calling you in, bringing you out of retirement, one last job. It's not actually true, but
I was like, please, no.
It's not actually
true. You're
I,
not leaving.
I do a lot of things. I have my fingers in many pies, and when you put your fingers in pies, nobody else wants them, so you end up owning them. So that's how that saying goes. But anyway, yeah, movement mechanics, that kind of stuff on Skyscale.
Joe.
Joe Clark. I'm a senior sound designer here at ArenaNet. I worked on the audio for the SkyScale. I pretty much work on everything that goes on here with my other teammates or three teammates.
Yeah, kind of designing and implementing what it sounds like in all
Correct.
its forms.
Yep. From the gutturals, the movement, the abilities. Yeah.
I'm excited about this because we have some videos of that to show later on, and where we're going to get into the breakdown of what makes these sounds exactly. Let's start off, though, and talk a little bit about movement, the motion of the thing, iterating the design, figuring out what problem this is trying to solve.
Okay.
Where did you even start?
Yeah. Okay. So, so when I was handed this thing, maybe start with it. When I said, please work on this more and keep iterating on it, it already had the sort of flight envelope concept where it's like it can operate within this sort of shell and then do things, but it can't like go outside of it. And so my first job was making that a little more reliable because it had some problems. But beyond that, it's like, okay, well, that on its own it's functional, but not like exciting. Like it needs some thing that people can, buttons people can push and stuff, which is where the dash came from, for example. Like dashes are cool, people enjoy it. And more than that, the wall jump is something sort of, I think that's sort of the defining aspect of this thing more than anything else. And that actually came out of frustrations with just missing ledges, like just short. Like, oh, if only I could jump in. So I was talking over some people near me. Right, I imagine you've been in that situation, like a griffin or something. You're just short of you drop.
Yeah, I'll like bash into the side of the cliff and just try to get it by hitting.
So close,
if I hit space really hard,
yeah, and
maybe I can convince it.
And so, having some kind of like some wall vault was originally wasn't like a cling or anything like that. It was just you could time it just right, like in like platforming games. A lot of times they'll have like you can stick to a wall for a second and then you hit spacebar and you jump up onto the thing. So that was the original idea. It was like, okay, we hit it and then you've got like a second or so and they can kind of jump up. And then at some point it evolved into, well, you could just stick to the wall forever. It doesn't really make any difference. And some people thought that was cool, so it ended up just having the cling pose, and you can just kind of chill and stare at people and watch them silently as they walk by.
So now we know what you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how I can talk for as long as you would like.
No, please. So you started with sticking to the walls, and then once you get that mastery,
so the way it works currently is you can stick to the wall by holding forward. You kind of, but the third mastery is what you actually want, and that's the one that lets you push spacebar to you burn some energy and you jump, and you get some altitude back. And they ended up being, trying to think where I want to go with this conversation. They ended up being sort of like the real innovation part of it, I guess. Like this is sort of the new thing that it brings to the table. So I think it's kind of hard to notice this when you're playing it, but that is the tool that you use for moving long distances with this thing, where whenever you use the wall jump, if you have moved substantially, like if you're like way over, like near your altitude cap or whatever, or you've gone past your altitude cap and you clip to a wall and then you push jump, it'll push that ceiling back up again, closer to where it was originally. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you can move along a cliff pretty far and you keep using wall jumps and you go to another cliff and you do wall jump. And that was sort of the envisioned design behind this thing. It's like, okay, well this is how it'll do sort of creative long distance motion, is you try to jump between cliffs.
Okay, so if you haven't made use of that yet,
you should try that.
Yes, give that a try.
But that's sort of like that resetting of the flight ceiling isn't necessarily obvious unless you've played it for a while, which of course I have, because but people who've just gotten their SkyScales might not notice that, and might not think to try to like, oh, I could use this to move really far. They might just be thinking of it as a means of moving vertically.
Straight up and not off to
and
the side.
And you can absolutely use it to go really long distances.
That's so cool. You did just remind me that we did pull a lot of questions off the forum, and we're going to answer some of those at the end of this segment. Yeah. What were some of your favorite things about working on this?
It's a dragon.
Like, there's not a downside at that point.
It's a dragon. Like, they're cool. I don't know. I mean, you'll have them on later. Brian, the animator for it, he's just fun to work with.
Yeah.
It's fun to have a back and forth thing. Just working with other people on the project. I mean, it's not really, maybe not quite what you wanted to ask, but
That works.
it's
I will
just,
take it.
It's just fun to work. Like the people involved are just fun.
Yeah. That's
Um,
a very
and
good
Dragon,
answer.
I guess.
Well, I want to talk about the collections a little bit with you, Stephen. Okay, so we've talked some about the different parts of the collections and what's required and what's needed and the time gate. I'm trying so hard to say time scale, which is a very different thing that we don't want to mess with.
Oh no.
How do you all decide some of what went into the collections and requirements?
Well, with the caveat that a lot of it was not my own personal choices.
Yeah, this was a huge team
intention-
effort.
The core intention was to make it feel like an actual living creature as much as possible, and that extended to the collection aspect. So all of the raising is to get the players to build this bond with their sky scale, I think more so than you get a chance to with a lot of the other mounts, and really have that sense that this is something that I've taken from the world and invested my time in, and now is giving back to me through this,
Yeah.
through this bouncing through the world aspect.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite things about implementing this?
I think my favorite was getting to drive through a few regions that I hadn't really dug into before. I've poked at the Dwarven Delves under Highlands a little bit, but over the process of implementing collections, I put several pieces into the Delves, and so that gave me a chance to kind of
You got to go play with that.
go through it a lot in a much calmer manner when not everything is trying to kill me, and gave me a much better appreciation for some of the places.
Yeah?
Mhm.
All right. And we also have some questions for you later on. Something that you mentioned to me that I wanted to make sure we called out that you really enjoy was the player cooperation aspect of different parts of the collection, even in some of its weirder iterations.
Oh, it is amazing. One of the reasons that I can tell that I'm still new to design is for one of the achievements, you have to res a certain number of characters, and the way that players have chosen to do this is by gathering together in places like Divinity's Reach at the edge of cliffs and doing their best lemming impressions, jumping over to be resed by the people below. And every other designer I've spoken to about this was like, oh, of course they're going to do that. And I was
Duh.
like, wait, what? Oh, no.
No, it's a good example of player cooperation, and they will find it. Death finds a way.
Death
I
finds
guess?
a way.
So did you just like stumble across this on live, and what is
Pretty much.
everybody doing?
Pretty much exactly that. Like, I was not expecting it until I saw it, and then suddenly it made perfect sense.
You hear like this clicking noise. Oh, that's what's going to happen. You also mentioned that you didn't get to come into the office to do some of this.
That's right. When we were doing the initial collection implementation, it was, if I remember correctly, late February. And for anybody who's not in this area, late February was snowpocalypse for basically all of Seattle.
Yeah.
Where in the span of a week and a half, we got something like 1.5 feet of snow thrown on top of us.
Yeah. And up where you live was really bad.
It is. I don't live anywhere near the office. I'm about 20 miles to the north, and our house is at the end of a cul-de-sac.
And
This
that's
shot
what it
right
was
here.
like.
So this was the view out my front window for the first week and a half after I got the tasks on my plate. And thankfully, we had just gotten implementation of, or I had just gotten set up proper VPN so I could work from home. And so this was the first time that I was able to actually start doing real like coding and design work from the from home, as
Yeah.
opposed to doing documentation and whatnot. So I was able to do a lot of the driving around Tyria and Duo work, which is our content editor, from my house where it was warm and I didn't have to try and drive
Down
on
405.
405 with all the other maniacs.
Did the plows ever get to your neighborhood? I meant to ask, and I'm curious.
They never actually did.
Nope.
There was this zone of about a quarter mile between our house and the first turnoff from our cul-de-sac where they just waited for it to melt, which meant that even after the snow ended, we had about 3 more days of, oh, nothing's happening and all of the actual streets are clear, but there's this quarter mile of hockey rink between me and anywhere that I feel like I could drive.
Yeah. So, thank you for being persistent and getting that done anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was legitimately fun. I got to ski to the store a couple of times for food.
Did you really?
I did. We have cross-country skis, and so I was able to trek to the local Albertsons.
I might have seen you.
New mount concept.
Do what?
Yeah.
New mount concept.
Cross country skis.
Cross-country skis.
Cross country ski mount.
Not actually serious. But
Snowcat.
Okay, you might have just seen the birth of a design idea. All right, so Joe, how about you? Do you want to talk a little bit about designing and implementing the SkyScale sound and where you even started?
Yeah. I think again, like working on a dragon is very exciting. So I actually haven't worked on dragons prior to this. That was pretty awesome.
Wait, you didn't?
I had not actually done a dragon before now, so this was kind of like
Wow.
in the past. Sound designer extraordinaire and former audio director Drew Cady kind of
Oh.
covered that. So he set a high bar for me to kind of match, and that was a nice kind of approach. So I had a little bit of reference of what dragons' interiors sound like, and just kind of get my own approach. And yeah, so a lot went into the dragon. One thing to call out is, I mean, I did all the audio for the most part, and then also another senior sound designer, Chris Burgess, helped out with the footsteps. He designed the footsteps for that, and that was an interesting one because we want to make the footstep sounds different from other mounts. So we kind of wanted to get the weight of the dragon, maybe if not literal, but just kind of like figurative, like this is a dragon.
Yeah, what that would sound like.
We give it a little more oomph, and Chris also had a great idea to. Chris is also our go-to cinematics audio support.
Yeah.
So in the previous cinematic, he had, I think it was Kate's branding with Aurene.
Oh, yeah.
He really wanted to focus on the kind of the claws and nails of Aurene. So he added some kind of crushed eggshells to that to kind of get that
Okay.
clickety sound, and a little bit with debris like rock and stuff. So he suggested that be a nice layer for the dragon to make that like a little different. So we added that, and kind of came up with the idea maybe really accentuate that on the hard surfaces. So if you're walking around with your dragon, if you're not flying, if you're walking around, you'll really hear those on like metals and woods and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun. And then I definitely wanted to get the wing flaps right. I put like nice leather layers in there. So as you're gliding, you'll kind of get some nice leathery sounds. I also didn't want it to be too heavy, so I kind of softened that out. So as you're flying, it's not too, messing with the mix and all that.
Too enormously heavy.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to show off the breakdown of some of these? 'Cause
Yes.
that was
So
extremely fun to me.
designing, so gutturals for most creatures, it's a similar approach, and it's not just really like, all right, this dragon needs a sound, and it's not just roar or so, like some one single note like sound comes out. You want to kind of get the whole motion of the sound. So if you think like some kind of animal, or there's a little bit of like the breathe in like the and then the sound like the actual exertion, and then you kind of want to have a nice tail, a little bit of like the maybe spasm of the throat, and just kind of like the body just like big exertion, and then kind of coming back to rest. So
I feel like we need your lamp chimney for this.
there's a little bit of
We
that
should've
in
brought
there,
that.
actually. Yeah. So yeah, designing sound is interesting. If people have caught some of our earlier audio segments, to sound design, you're trying to recreate or create a new sound, and it's kind of a lot of like pulling in of other assets. You have the sound in your mind, and it's almost like cooking in a sense. Like I know all these ingredients I want. So for the sky scale, like a reptile. I kind of referenced obviously pre-existing dragon concepts and like a crocodile or something like those. One of the coolest sounding animals. Just very girthy and like a lot of
Like that
bassy.
hollow. Yeah.
So, yeah, we could take a look at some of my
Yeah, let's
isolated
see.
assets.
What do we have first? Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't want to go too deep into it, but like one of the things I brought attention to was like there's a lot of processing in there, like pitch, reverb, distortion, a little distortion. So one of them I think was what was it? It was the I can't remember. I think it was the balloon or something. But anyway, yeah, just like kind of like separating, like wanting to give a little taste of this is the sound I pulled from, and then just adding a little bit of like pitching it down and adding some distortion, just gives it a little more energy and separates it. The map gas, some of the layers, I wanted like friction, so friction's great. Friction is your friend for sound design, and for us having a nice Foley room really helps, so we can kind of get those gestures and get that the sound we want. So like the rubber band on a djembe, which is a drum, like just kind of like shaking your hand, like vibrating your hand as you're pulling down. You get that, which I don't know, kind of adds to the character of the sound. And the map gas, which is like a little welding torch, kind of gave us that. I went for that sound for like a little bit of the grit, a little bit of like the rasp of the sound. So I think we have some more.
Yeah, let's
stuff.
look at another one.
Moved his garbage can on the rug or the carpet, and it was like, that's amazing. This is how it goes. You're just always listening, and you're like,
Yeah.
I have to record this. This is
Well, I
great.
remember Drew had this story a while back about how he was visiting family and there was a squeaky door
Oh yeah.
at the end of a hallway or something, and that's everybody else was just like, "Oh, annoying squeaky door." He waited till everybody else was asleep so it would be quiet and went and recorded.
I did the same thing. Went to San Juan Island and like with my fiance, just went on vacation. We got to this random house and I opened the door. It was like a screen door, and it was like, this sounds amazing. So I waited for her to fall asleep. I'm like, creeped out there and played around with that door, and I don't know. Always on
Well,
call.
Yeah, and that's how you get this stuff. To answer the incredibly important questions that were just passed on to us from chat, it was Greek yogurt and cherry jello.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
good that we have our priorities in order.
You get a completely different sound off of traditional yogurt, and never mix the cherries in.
Correct.
I want to know if this is true. I need like A/B testing on this now that Stephen has caused this. And I wanted to clarify that you did clean the bellows out because
We
that
did
was
clean the
concerning me a
bellows.
lot because I go in there sometimes.
It was very
And-
disgusting.
Yes.
I think it might still be red, but
Ugh.
yeah, we gotta do some more recordings of that. Yeah, the Jello is interesting. So with I believe it was the yogurt had that nice little gallopy sound. So I kind of added that to like the tail, like I was saying, of the Sky Scales guttural. So you kind of get that, and then it's kind of like spasmy throat. Just kind of, I don't know. That's a nice way to design. And then with the Jello, it was a very light kind of bellow movement, so it was kind of giving this airiness to it. So I think what's interesting about like kind of like breaking these out for people, I think I'm biased, I don't know, but you get the you use all these sounds in isolation, and you're just like, oh, that's weird. And then you put them all together, and like you don't, maybe you can pick some out, now that you've heard them in isolation, but just in as I design it, it's very interesting.
Legitimately, I had no idea there were that many layers in it.
There's a good amount of layers.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yes.
Did we have another one, or was that the
2 more?
We have 2 more. Okay.
Let's get through it.
Let's do another one. You have a lot of weird stuff in that room. I just want to say, and it goes to making such cool stuff.
We'll kick to the next one real quick. And then I didn't mention in the stove door. I don't even remember where we got that stove door. It's still in that room.
Is it in there?
I did a little pitch envelope, so I just kind of draw in a quick envelope for the pitch. So it's not just the screech, so it kind of like screeching, and kind of like I want to get that gesture,
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea.
The crow, I thought the crow was funny. I don't know. It's actually, it's a crow sound, but I pitched it down a bunch and just kind of laid it in there. Nice little formant sound. Yeah. It's weird.
The funny thing is, I can still recognize the crow, just
Yeah.
because we hear them so constantly here.
Yes.
It's absolutely the thing. So there are, how many layers were into that last one? Did I count like 8? Oh, I lost count.
The car engine rev was funny. It's kind of, again, as I'm designing, I'm pulling people in. I'm getting a lot of reference from my team and cross disciplines. Just like, does this sound like a dragon? Or and another our senior technical sound designer Keenan C came in and it's like, have you thought about adding a car engine rev? And I'm like, now you're talking. So I threw that in there. I'm like, perfect. This is great. Yeah.
So did you already have that, or did you have to go out to the parking garage?
We
and
already
use someone's
had it.
car? Okay.
If I didn't have it, I would have gotten it. But yeah.
That's fair. You know what? While we're on the topic of audio, something that you had called out about part of the collection was the musical callback to various battles.
My one little design suggestion for the collection was I did the implementation on the talk to your egg aspects of the collection, where you bring it to Heart of Thorns. I'm completely blanking on the name of the Magoovan jungle. You bring it to the jungle and tell it how you defeated Mordremoth. You tell it how you defeated Balthazar. And Keenan was able to put together some little callback cues for that are just absolutely amazing.
Do we have those?
We do have those.
Okay. So let's listen to those. That was such a good musical cue. I like that you guys worked together on that. Just reminiscent of each battle.
It was just an amazing job. Kudos to Keenan for that. And yeah, it was really,
It's a very good suggestion.
as I was putting them together, we knew that we couldn't have voice for these, so it'd be great. I thought it would be great if we could at least have some explanation almost of what you were doing right there, and the audio was the perfect thing for that.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to hit up questions here shortly, but you had commented about the name of we've been saying dragon this whole time, but there was like some work that went into that particular thing.
There was. I've been, every time somebody says dragon, I have this little flinch internally.
I'm so sorry.
Because I got like multiple weeks of kind of training almost on sky scale. Remember, it's the sky scale. And there were actual passes over all the content that went in, both for the collection and I think for the map itself, that were like, did we call it a dragon anywhere? Make sure we didn't call it a dragon anywhere. It's a sky scale.
I'm sorry, I know this isn't how it works, but I'm just picturing a giant find and replace.
I mean, in our defense,
It's closer than you think.
for much of its lifetime in development, it didn't have a name.
Yeah.
It was the dragon.
It's kind of like a Queensdale is Valley Hill.
Yeah, it's Valley.
No, stop doing that. It's so confusing.
We have internal names for everything. So
I had to, actually, that was one thing. While I was placing all the content for my collections, I had to keep this list up in a window of the real names of the maps, the player-facing names of the maps, and the internal names of the maps.
Internal
because
names are
I
the
had
devil.
no idea.
Every time somebody uses one, I'm just like, no, I need you to translate that for me because I've only remembered about half of them.
Hmm.
So, and then we keep having new maps, and I don't know those names either. It's like, I don't know, point to it. All right, so do you guys want to talk about some of what our players on the forums had questions about?
Absolutely.
All right.
all of these are from
guys-
me, except for the last one.
I'm sorry, I put them in order so you guys could read them easily. Joel, you're up.
Well, I will take the first one, and then I guess Stephen, you can take the last one. And we'll
Yeah.
go from there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How do you balance mount movement?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad question. There's no like hard or fast rule on how I do it. I'm not the only one, but I I'll look at like the first thing like let's say that the basic design of the mount is like, okay, we know that it's trying to solve this problem approximately. Then it's like, okay, well, like for example, you look at like a raptor or a griffin or something, and it's like how good is it at solving, like getting across a canyon? And like, okay, well, like you just start jumping in the air and you start tracing out the path of it. It's like, okay, well, what's the arc look like? How far can it go? How high up on something can it get? Then you just start finding different places in the world. It's like, should I be able to get on this? Can I get on that? Or I could get on that. Should I be able to get on that kind of stuff? It's a lot of sort of feel, and eventually it gets into hard numbers. But for a lot of the initial work, it's just kind of just try it, just play around with it a lot.
I can also actually speak to this one a little bit
Please.
because
Yeah,
I did do some of the mount movement for Path of Fire itself.
Yep.
And Joel and I were kind of like the devil and angel sides of mount movement, where Joel is a big proponent of making it better. where better is like more exciting and more fun. And I am that quiet voice always saying, "Do you realize how much this will break?" And then,
Oh, no.
especially after I took on some of the skimmer movement stuff, I've always kind of had this little glare now again, like, "You're not going to make it worse now, are you? People aren't going to stop using this." And so there's
not
that little
precious.
bit of like. I think part of the balance is making sure that every mount does have its place.
That it is it's especially like going forward. You always have to look back at the existing pantheon of mounts and go like, okay, well, like have we outclassed something to the point where no one's going to bother with it anymore? Because if so, that's a problem. And like for a recent example, like the sky scale, let's say, because I'm going to use the right word.
Yay!
Yay.
It's very good at going up, to the point where there was a concern that it would completely displace Springer, and so one of the compromises was like, okay, well, what if we just made the Springer charge faster, so it's better at. We have new guys.
Yeah, so
They're well.
It's
waiting
okay,
in the
it's
wings.
okay.
Guys might be a while. So sometimes the correct answer is to go back and look at the mounts that are getting stepped on and go, oh, we can bring those up a little. It's actually safe to do so. Maybe we were a little too conservative initially. And it's like, it's actually okay to make this a little better.
Right.
And then sometimes the answer is, okay, the new one is like, it's completely blowing this out. We gotta rein it in. But there's no singular rule.
Well, I also actually, sorry, I'm reminded suddenly from POF development. I really appreciate, I don't think players ever saw much of this, but the Skyscale's engage skill is actually a callback to some of the early engage skills that were being kicked around, or some of the tests that were being done for mounts and like mounted combat skills almost. And I just remember you flaming everything in Queensdale with
Yes.
wyverns
That's-
coming in and breathing fire
That's very
across
early,
the entire
yeah.
landscape.
Yeah, that was like early mounts development before we even had a strong concept of what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
And it's like,
that
well,
was-
what's the thing you're gonna want to fly? It's gonna be a dragon, right? So I went and found a wyvern, which is the closest I could get, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna fly that.
And every
Excuse me, legendary wyvern. You weren't screwing around.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna burn stuff,
and yeah, still every time I see Skyscale engage, that's the thing that I call back to in my head. So
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't. I always kind of laugh at that one video because you bring in that legendary
yeah, well,
wyvern.
it's in Queensdale too.
He's immolating everything, and there's one bandit going, "A little help." Dude, it is far too late. We're done here.
the kid who's like, "I'm gonna get you, you chicken. You don't know what a chicken
no,
is.
No,
This is
that's not how any of this works. That was super fun. So how about that second one? Excuse me.
Actually, Steven, would you like to take? Because these are all going to be me except for the last question.
I'll jump in on the last one then.
Sure.
So there are a couple of reasons why the collection begins at the end of the
Did you want
episode.
to read the question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen this, the question is, why did you decide to begin the collection after the end of the episode instead of when you first meet the Skyscales? And primarily, there are story reasons for that. We needed Goric to help you through the entire collection. Goric's very busy during the storyline of Dragonfall. The Skyscales don't get sick until the events of Dragonfall. I'm not going to spoil those events, but for story reasons, it made the most sense to place the collection's beginning after the episode itself has completed. And it also gave us the opportunity to give players something to do after the episode. It's nice when players can actually play through the entire story, and there's just some concern that if you start a collection in the middle of the story, some players will go off and divert themselves with the collection and never come around to finishing the episode. So we just really wanted to make this an epilogue and something that you could do to further explore the story of these creatures once you'd finish exploring the story of the map itself.
That makes sense. Yeah. So there's more to do after you finish the story.
Exactly.
Okay.
I will answer that third one there.
Okay.
So the question is, will there be adjustments to the overall mechanics of the mount? And it's a pretty broad question. No, with exceptions. The main concern I've seen raised in various discussion forums is it's actually it's a pretty specific thing, but a lot of people want it to work, which is when you mount this thing in the air, after you use an updraft, after you use a jump mushroom, you break out of it, etc. We had made, we being me, had made a change to Griffin where when you mount the Griffin in midair, it sets its effectively sets its altitude ceiling to where you mount up. So back up another step. So the way Griffin has this concept of a soft ceiling, where when you are pitching up, there's no like hard cap, but the gravity starts to crank up after you get a certain amount over where you started vertically. The idea being you have to at least get up onto a cliff in order to be able to get to that height anywhere else. You can't just like go super high.
Yeah.
And so the mechanics, it's fairly generous when you're trying to recover your altitude. When you pitch up again, you can often get up higher than where you started. But there is this soft ceiling that'll keep you from going too high. And so what happened is people would take a jump mushroom and they'd mount on the Griffin and then dive and try to pitch up. And the ground point would be way down here, so they could be, and they couldn't actually get altitude. So the solution was, fine, we'll just set the ground position to wherever you mounted, no problem. SkySail doesn't have that, which is partially an oversight. I thought I'd fix this, but it just kind of slipped under the radar. But I was thinking about this yesterday as to how to actually solve it, and it's actually complicated. So right now the SkyScale's flight canopy is based on its last ground position. And if we were to reset that to its current position when it mounts up, suddenly your altitude would bump up by a lot. And so what people would do is they would fly to max height, eject your seat, mount back up again. And now your altitude cap bumped up, but the full flight cap. And then they just keep doing that forever. Just the ejector seat is it's partially my fault.
Every time Joel says it's complicated, I get this little twinge inside.
Yeah,
And I'm just like, oh, this is going to get good.
yeah, there are details.
I'm sorry.
There are details. Yeah, the ejector seat was I signed off on that one. That's my doing. I mean,
Ejector seat is the next gem store chair, right?
also possible. What was it? What's the actual in-game name? I don't. Again, this is the in-game names versus internal names. It's Skill 8. The mastery.
skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, Skill 8.
Bond of Faith.
Bond of Faith,
Sure.
yeah.
That's what it's called. And so that alone isn't a solution. So like, okay, well, what if you say, fine, you can take your current position and then shift it down by your max altitude height or thereabouts, and then so when you mount up in midair, you'll just be sitting at max altitude, but you can still like fly up and down. You're not super far in the red, and that's fine. Except that then you can go, okay, well, you can still jump pretty far up a wall. You can like wall hop, bond of vigor, wall hop, and you're way above your intended functional ceiling. And then you eject your seat and remount, and you're still way above where you're supposed to be, even with that adjustment in place. So, suffice to say, it's complicated. I'm working on it. We'll see. It is known. You don't need to keep telling me. I know. Otherwise, it's basically doing what it's supposed to do. I think a lot of the troubles people are running into is they just haven't flown it for very long, because they haven't had it for very long. There's some hidden features on this thing that people don't know about. Like I mentioned earlier that it's designed. A lot of what it's built to do is to move along walls or between walls. That's sort of its whole shtick. And it's actually it that makes it fairly different from other like a Griffin or a Beetle, which are very averse to running into walls. It's things like, no, I want the walls. That's sort of the terrain that I interact with. But when Alina and I were talking over this before, in order to keep it from, we wanted to be able to do this sort of like wall traversal, but not also be able to just ascend vertically. Like we used to go to the Derwent Priory and just, can you go all the way to the top? If the answer was yes, then it's probably broken. And so the solution that we came to was, all right, if you move away from the point that you last wall jumped, you will gain energy faster. Your jump energy will come back faster. So you're encouraged to move horizontally rather than vertically. You can go vertically, but you get more out of it if you move that way. So just something to keep in mind when you're trying to like plot out, okay, can I get through this? Is if you keep moving, you will get your jump juice back pretty fast. Just
All right.
little details. Anyway.
So SkyScale hints. All right, what else?
What other questions are up here? Yeah.
I can talk about the collection requirements a little bit. So, to the best of my knowledge, actually, the SkyScale's movement and its collection were designed largely independently. But given that they were both designed by Alina, there is...
Independently by the same person.
Independently by the same person.
does things at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, the question was, when you were developing the Sky Scale, did you have the collection requirements in mind, or did that develop over time?
Thank you.
So, carry on. Sorry.
That said, the collection got an entire design of its own. And honestly, when I started implementing it, I was amazed by kind of the depth of storyline, frankly, that Alina was able to put into the collection, and the way that she was able to really make it feel like an activity in its own right, and not just kind of not only a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Let's see. What
Not a
else?
whole lot of audio questions in here. Sorry, you just
I answered them all.
you'll just
got it.
use that to hang out.
It's very thorough.
I'm
Yeah.
learning a lot right now.
Yeah, well. So I guess I hit those top two there, and they're basically the same concept.
Mhm.
So the broadly the question is, so what is the reasoning behind this the way the flight mechanic works? Like why is this canopy in place in the first place? Like, what breaks if this thing can just arbitrarily fly anywhere? And it's kind of a deep philosophical question if you really want to get into it.
We do.
Which I guess we do.
This comes back to the angel and devil to some extent.
right,
too.
right. So
Steve's
some
just
of it
crying.
is I guess the most reduced form of the answer is our game is built around interacting with terrain, like super broad philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
We interact with terrain, like Beetle rolls down hills, Springer jumps up things, Raptor jumps across things. Even Griffin, which is very good at flying, you still have to get up onto something and then dive off. So you still have this initial interaction with their terrain. If you have a mount that can just start from any point and then go up and then you never need to touch ground again, you're no longer interacting with the world that we've built. You're just kind of floating out free. And so given that like we want you to do that to some extent, it would work counter that goal and also completely displace all the other mounts. You could get anywhere, right? You could just I could ignore all of these terrain problems and just start at any arbitrary point, up, over, and down.
Yeah, totally.
And it's kind of boring. Like
There is a phrase that gets kicked around the studio a lot, joy of movement.
Yeah.
And frankly, flying, some people do get some joy in like the raw flight, but it does get very monotonous after a while. And having that variety of movement really is, at least for me, more enjoyable overall than always having the one thing that's the best at doing this stuff.
you can make the hypothetical counter argument. Like, oh, Griffin can fly forever. So Griffin, you have to work at it a little. It's not like super hard, but you still have to start somewhere, and then you still have to every once in a while refresh your altitude, like refresh your velocity, and so you're still interacting with something. Whereas Skyscale was built to be it hovers wherever you put it. That's kind of its thing.
There is a lot of skill in flying Griffin well too. I see those videos of people
Yeah,
doing like the collections through Divinity's Reach, and just my jaw.
Well, and what's fun watching those is they do that. It's always close to the ground. Those are the fun ones to watch when you're really low, at really high risk of hitting something. Same with Beetle going through tight turns and stuff like that. It's like there's always this sort of risk factor. And Skyscale is built to not have that sort of risk of like if you hit something, it's okay. It's fine with hitting walls. It wants to hit walls, and so to give that to have that on top of being able to just fly wherever would make it ultimately kind of not interesting. So that's how it ended up how it is. That's obviously where the position is.
That was a good answer.
Mhm.
That works. Let's see. I kind of like that first one. I feel like kind of everybody can pitch in on that one.
So the question is, how do you test maps to make sure that the mounts don't break them? Before we had mounts in-game, did testers have some sort of mount-like exploration mode? The short version of that is that we had mounts for a long time before players had mounts, and there was a very extensive QA pass on existing maps to make sure that mounts did not blow out too much. And there's also been a lot of post-facto retrofitting of the inevitable bits and pieces that we missed over time, where mounts proved to be just a little bit too good at some things, and a couple of no mount zones had to get tucked in here and there.
Yeah, when I read that question, one of the things I was thinking about, I think about how long we've been working on this. And I remember like way back in the early days of testing mounts, it was just like this raptor. One of the things that we've talked about a lot in our game is how the mounts, they have weight and they feel like the animal they are, and they have, there's thought that goes into their movement. And I remember the very, very early days, like the raptor was just this thing that didn't have animation. It wasn't moving. And it was just like skidding around the map, and it felt like a styrofoam statue because it was so light. And that's how long we've been testing those and working on them behind the scenes for ages.
It's a good skin idea.
A styrofoam statue? No, you just use permafrost on the whole thing, and you've got it.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yes, it's exact. I don't know if you guys have seen any of these like characters or mounts that are all
Oh, yes.
permafrost.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it looks like there's something wrong with the game.
Yeah, that is the basic answer though. Lots of time. As is the answer with many things. You spend lots of time.
Yeah.
That's how you check for breaking the maps.
I do like the permafrost roller beetles, I'll say, just like giant snowballs rolling around the map.
Ah, that's right. You know, we have a tonic. If you want a giant snowball, talk to me after. Because we can do that too. But yes, I like the permafrost roller beetle. And you're not going to miss it. I mean, like, you're going to see it coming. Holy crap. Okay, what else?
Why did you decide to remove Gorik and the Skyscales from the stables?
After the collection is
After the
complete.
collection is complete. Gorik has things to do and places that he wants to be, and Gorik has his own life to live, and cannot hang around your stable forever.
Yeah, if we trapped him there forever, that kind of pulls him out of being able to do anything else.
As for the Skyscale, that is a very good question, and one that doesn't have a good answer right now, except that, maybe they shouldn't.
Okay, so we'll look into that.
So we'll look into that.
All right, that's fair. Let's see, what else? I think that one's for you, Stephen.
The top one or the middle one?
All of them.
The next one. Yeah,
Oh.
the middle one.
Any chance that the activities you did with your young Skyscale could return? Do you think you would ever consider adding some type of mini games in Sun's Refuge like the ones in the collection? Without making any promises here, I know that I asked Alina about this, and she would love to see possibly some adventures made out of these. So I can say that we are also thinking along these lines, and personally, I would like to play catch with my Skyscale pretty much as any player
Yes.
out there, I think. So
Yeah, if time and resources were infinite.
if time and resources were infinite, it would absolutely happen.
Yeah. All right, any more?
I do not know the lore well
Yeah,
enough. There's a
Okay,
lore question
that's
as to
cool.
where the Skyscales came from, and my
Our
understanding
imagination.
is it was Kralk's magic, but please don't hold me to that. I do
That's
not
fair.
know the details.
Like, Tom's out there somewhere. We could go get him. Don't go get him. He's probably
I
working.
think Krauk falling from like the magic of coming from the mist into Tyria and crashing all those different worlds.
Okay. Cool. All right, and those are for later, so. All right, do you guys have anything that you want to add?
I will think of it about 5 minutes after I walk out of this.
That will have, you can bust back in the room. Don't do that.
Probably won't do that.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. You guys stick around with us for just a couple minutes while we get our next round of dev guests up here, and I will let you all get back to work. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. That
Absolutely.
was really fun.
Thank you. It is always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you. All right, thank you guys.
Bye,
You stick around. We'll be right back.
guys.
Hi guys, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around and waiting. We're going to jump into the next segment where we have artists and animators. And we're going to talk about the look of the sky scale and the design. So why don't you three go through, introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, what you do here at ArenaNet, and what you worked on for the sky scale.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kate Fileshifter. I'm the creature art lead on Guild Wars 2, and I was mainly responsible for doing art direction and concept review for the sky scale.
I'm Brian Walter. I do animation, and I did animation on the sky scale.
Sweet.
I'm Pete Egbers as a creature artist on the sky scale. So I took it from the concept to the production asset.
Awesome. All right, so let's just kind of walk through the design a little bit. We started with the Griffin rig on this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was, I think it was Pete mentioned that the concept sculpt came, you were given the concept sculpt and then started working with that.
Yeah. correct.
How did that go?
Went lovely.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was great. So it went really well. The concept sculpt was awesome. Normal procedures just to make sure that everything that was done in the concept actually fits the Griffin rig, since it's based on the Griffin rig. So you make sure the joints are in the right place and, the jaw functions properly, which is, a bigger deal than it sounds like.
Really?
Yeah, things like that.
So what is it like if it's not fitted properly?
Well, it's just...
I mean, I know it's not going to just fall off.
Yeah,
but-
I mean, it's not like a huge deal, but in the concept sculpt, I want to say it was closed, but I want to say in our default one, it's open a little bit. So you just want to make sure all that stuff's right, because if it's not, it'll break animations down the line that are expecting it to be a certain position from the get-go.
Yeah, like the skeletons are in what we call a zero pose.
Okay.
And so that's like all the joints are zeroed out, and the game uses that for the rotation on the joints as the base. So basically what happened is, since it's based off the rig of the Griffin zero pose had the mouth open, but the dragon had it closed. So then when those animations get put on it, the mouth is then offset from where it was, so
like
the mouth starts
extra
doing
closed.
weird.
Oh,
different-
no.
So we had to do a couple back and forth, like, okay, what way? Okay, we need it to be open so that these animations of them chomping the fish actually work, right?
Oh, yeah, because that's a super fun fidget. That's a really fun idle one.
It sounds relatively simple, but it's like a very minute detail that you have to make sure it's skinned just right. Otherwise, like, things will get off very quickly. Like, the mouth will overshoot the skull, or the mouth will just always hang open. And you want to make sure it fits just right.
Yeah, or if the eyeballs are in the wrong place and they orbit around the joint for the eyeball, the eyeballs will fly out of the head or something.
Yeah.
That feels like a big deal, yes.
Yeah, so it's like, it's little details that count.
I'm sorry, I'm horrified by that. Wait, we need those.
Such as eyeballs staying in your skull. It's very
Okay.
important.
Something that you mentioned, and this entertained me, and I feel like it's not as huge of a deal as your eyeballs flying out of your skull, because I'm not moving past that anytime soon. But we actually got its teeth weren't showing?
Well,
Am I telling this right?
Yeah, more or less. So the concept sculpt just didn't really have obvious teeth. Like, it had like a gum line.
Here.
And so, yeah, I think we have an image for that.
We have images.
What do I click?
It's what you're looking at is over here.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I
So
can picture.
Okay, so we had Grandpa Dragon.
Well, I think there's on the left there's
Yep.
Grandpa Dragon. Yeah, so we didn't give him dentures so much, I guess. We gave him actual teeth. We wanted to make sure you could see the teeth even when his mouth was closed. I mean, there could have been teeth inside of his mouth like a normal animal, but we wanted to, make it a little bit more aggressive and, dragon-like at all times.
He definitely looks fine as he is, but just to kind of get some of that coolness factor across.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make them be more like a crocodilian
crocodile
mouth.
type thing, yeah.
Yeah. Just for the fun of it.
Yeah. I had noticed there were some other changes on there too. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the iteration of the appearance? Because I know you went through some different things that you considered.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, if you go back to that image, for example, the one on the right was an earlier one. The whole concept with this guy was to try and have something that felt heroic, felt strong, powerful, badass, and made you feel heroic, strong, powerful, and badass without being villainous, without necessarily being ugly. So the one on the right is like a little bit more villainous looking, partially due to his kind of almost like vampire jaw. Still really awesome, but went and did the one on the left instead, with the addition of some crocodile style teeth, of course.
I'm okay with the crocodile teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? Let's see. We had some conversation about finding the proper wing size, and that was like a whole odyssey, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Brian can speak a lot to that one.
Yeah, so mounts take a long time to make. So
Yes.
No,
So-
you just slap them together and it's easy.
so utilizing the Griffin, we wanted to save time because he already had a bunch of animations.
Yeah.
And so, however, the Griffins, we also wanted the dragon, well, Sky Scale, to stand out, and not look exactly like the Griffin.
Sure.
So there's a lot of posing changes we can do. There's some adjustments to the animations we do, but also just the silhouette of the character we wanted to make feel more like a Sky Scale, like a dragon. So we played around with the scale of the wings to kind of emphasize that shape.
Go ahead and click it to the next one and we can take a peek at what that was like.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
here, let
here.
me see.
No, I did not get the rundown on the remote.
That's okay. We should be good. Mark, can you kick it forward for us? No. Okay. So while I have my argument with this, besides the wings, what else did you work on to give it that slightly different look?
So there's the base idle pose for one. The Griffin stands very differently than the Sky Scale stands. So it was just figuring out that base idle pose was the biggest silhouette change. And then the Griffin runs very light, it's very bird-like. So his run animation is very light. So using that run on the Sky Scale, we had to kind of mess with the curves and make him a little heavier, tone down some of the motions so he felt bigger and more dragony.
Okay, that's fair. So he just feels more solid. And that's like what we were talking about in the last segment, in that they've got different weights and they've got that feel of what they are, and not just this very light bird-like thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be much heavier set of a guy than the Griffin. Partially also to differentiate out their flying and play styles. The Griffin is smaller wings, lighter, much faster, and more so used for diving and crossing areas pretty quickly. The Dragon is more of like your hover vehicle for navigating more precisely.
Okay. I'll tell you, and I managed to get this working. So let's take a look at some of the other concepts that you guys were working with, and I'll just let you, I think that was you, Caitlin?
Okay,
I'm still thinking really hard about this. I'm so sorry.
it's okay. I apologize for
that's a first. No, that's a first for me. I'm kind of proud of myself. I'm realizing I've managed to never do that before. I'm very sorry. But I will let you talk about the concepts on the different appearances of the head on the Sky Scale.
Oh, sure. Yeah, for this, we were trying to just find out some different takes to go on this guy. All kinds of crazy things from Jim Van den Bogart. That was the concept artist that we had on this. We ended up focusing on horns that were oriented more forward, just to get that kind of like attack, battle ready sense to the guy, but also as a technical constraint. We knew we wanted him to have a very prominent, like very iconic kind of S curve to the neck, kind of classical Western European dragon pose to his idle pose. And that puts his head relatively close to where the player is going to be sitting. So it could be a problem on, say, Char or Norn type characters if his horns are very large and are facing backwards.
And swept back
and just stabbing you all the time.
just repeatedly, it's worth it, it's worth it, it's
Yeah,
worth it. You're getting stabbed in the neck by his horns.
But we toned it down from some of these just to have more of try to have a balance between like a classic horn look and something that also frames the face, satisfies those technical constraints, and looks cool and badass, but also not looking like too evil or like too unconventional.
Yeah, like you've got this terrifying creature that could turn on you any instant.
Yeah.
Is not the look we want.
Yeah, one of the top left ones up there kind of makes me think he has a spider on his head.
Oh no, I can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Still cool, just a different approach.
Yes, there is. Okay, yeah, it's the spider head sky scale now in my head. I'm terrified. Let's see, what else? What's the next one?
Oh, this is another earlier take where you can see a little bit more of the, I think in a previous guild chat I mentioned that there were some aspects of the neck that were kind of based off of snakes and cobras. You can see that a little bit more in this guy. He's a little too thin, and I think that's the reason we went with the other approach. He's, again, still cool, but a little less classical dragon, not quite as beefy and buff as we wanted to go for.
The one on the left, you can really, really see that snake-like influence.
Yeah, yeah. And then this guy also looks a little bit more nefarious than the final version we went for. We want your sky scale to feel like he's definitely a badass, but he's also still your friend and your partner, and you could probably pet him without him biting your hand off.
Just give him fish.
Yeah, just give him
It's okay.
fish. Give him some treats.
So the next one is one that I'm really interested in talking about, just one design direction that we were thinking about. So I'll let you move it forward and talk about that one.
Yeah. So this is from when, and I guess I can say spoilers now, when we were trying to figure out how to justify these dragons' existence, how they're going to be generated from Kralkatorrik crashing into the ocean, and that impact creates this whole new land and area that you explore. It also creates these dragons. So you're thinking maybe they would be more geologic slightly in some of the aspects of their features. Maybe they would have rocks on them or crystals or like this, but
Yeah.
it ended up making them feel a little too evil, too close to branded, and not got further away from also that kind of classic Western European style dragon that we wanted to go for. For the default, the base dragon, we really wanted something that would mesh with as many different kind of personal player styles as possible.
Right.
Like your personal aesthetics for your character, and could work in as wide a variety of those. And then like maybe with skins later, we'd offer some more specific things to style it directly towards whatever style you're going for with your character.
Yeah, I can see as the branded look is really fun. Excuse me. The branded look is really fun. It's interesting. I love the look of it personally, but it also looks like something that we have been trained to see as an enemy
Yeah.
for years and years now.
Yeah, that was primarily one of the reasons why we shied away from doing that.
Yeah, and I don't feel entirely comfortable being that close to that particular thing.
Yeah, maybe if your character is styled like a necromancer or a more evil-y dude, then maybe you'd like that. But again, it's trying to make it work for like the widest variety of players to start with.
Right.
And then also, again, to feel like he's your partner, he's your friend. He's not like some offspring of Kralkatorrik, this guy that you just killed
Surprise, we're friends now.
off. Yeah.
No hard feelings about that Kralkatorrik thing.
Yeah, killed your dad. Don't worry about it.
It's fine.
He was bad. Trust us. We're your new dad.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I can see how this would be a risky proposition. Like, how long are we going to be able to keep this up before everything goes terrible?
Yeah. Just raise him as a baby and never tell him the truth. He'll be okay, I'm sure.
I see no way that could go wrong. I'm sure it's fine. So we do have the wing size up next. I'm going to have you share
Sure.
with Pete.
There you go. You can use the magic remote.
Yeah, so
All right, so here's
this
one
is
of our...
the dragon sky scale at his shipped state. His wings are scaled up to 1.5 times what the griffin is.
Okay.
Um,
So
and
that
then-
was just, we were having fun.
Yeah, and so we wanted to see how far we could go, right? And so I was like, okay, I'll just double it. And I mean, it looks cool. It animates. It's fine. But then they get a little too big and start clipping into stuff and hitting things they probably
There's
shouldn't.
there's consideration for
Uh-huh.
how he looks on the ground, right, when he's running and
Yeah.
having this huge things like
They're
See,
just dragging
that's
behind
Yeah.
you.
in the air. Awesome. On the ground, it's like, wait, why does he have these huge things just burdening him? And then, of course, I
did
had
that?
to shrink them super small because we just wanted to see what it could do. And this one just speaks to needing animated. So
Oh. He's trying so hard. I feel like at that point there's like a limit to how big of a player character you can put on him. Like you get a Norn up there and he's like, no, please stop.
I feel like it needs to be going hyper fast like a bumblebee or a hummingbird.
Yes. Can we get on that? I would love to see just that particular animation, like hummingbird like, just because he's trying so hard to stay on flight.
oh yeah, so the way we scaled the wings is through the animation, like the joints of the wings. I just can scale them in the program up and down. So this way we inherit the animation that exists from Griffin. And then, now we just scale them up and they're bigger, right? And so you get those glides and then, well, obviously we had to add the new, like, hovering and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I keep looking back because I love the tiny little wings just working.
I just want him to be going super fast. Struggles.
It looks like they need to, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we got through the wings. The look of the tail and scales, that kind of thing, kind of ping-ponging off what Kate was saying. Where did you start as far as what those were going to look like?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I took what James had given us, which was pretty cool. It kind of had like a gecko-y vibe to it to begin with, so I kind of just sort of went with that because I thought that looked cool. Made sure the spikes were pronounced and everything, because it's a dragon. Yeah, and then as far as the scales went, he had put in a lot of like kind of archetype scales that were kind of larger and kind of just give it a lot of character. And then I tried to complement it with some smaller ones along the belly just to give it a little bit of contrast. Put some bigger ones in the front just to kind of also make a contrast from the small ones that are also in the front. But yeah, mostly I was just trying to complement the concept with those kind of decisions.
That is something that I've noticed. I have spent probably enough time to make it weird, just looking at what the different parts of it look like, especially after I talked to the three of you, looking at the different scale patterns and their grading up and down looks really good. You can tell you put the time into it.
Thank you.
So it looks fantastic, and it's one of those little details to just kind of take some time and look at, and not just kind of pass over it and take it for granted, because the work you guys put in shows.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scales are very important on Dragon.
Sky scales.
Yeah, probably also the thing that takes the longest.
Really?
Yeah. It's just like you putting the amount of detail into them, and you don't want to just use like stamped information. It never looks quite as good as something that is more honed to the actual, specific to the actual underlying anatomy, and then the actual like block out. So everything kind of needs like to be personally touched up on.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I have a last question for you guys. What was your favorite thing about working on this?
Making a dragon.
Everybody's like, I got to make a dragon. I know we're not supposed to call it that. I'm sorry, Stephen. Yeah. You got to make a dragon.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing that I do here at the studio. Would do it all day, every day if I could. Yeah.
World of Dragons.
Yep.
I think my favorite thing was doing the fidget where you throw the fish to the dragon.
Oh, that was
Sky
you,
scale.
wasn't? Oh, that is really fun. How did you decide? Okay, this is what it needs to be.
Well, a lot, because fidgets are where you can really sell the personality of your mount,
Yeah.
and people have really liked the interactions of fidgets we've done in the past. So trying to
The raptor
think,
shaking you.
yeah. So getting that moment with your mount really ties it together. And I think I was talking to Kate one day, just like, hey, do you have any ideas for fidgets? Like, 'cause she's super into animals and behavior stuff. So just getting
cool.
some ideas and stuff. And I think we had mentioned, oh, yeah, feeding it. And so originally we were talking about, oh, maybe it's like a fruit or something. But then our effects artist, Nick, he rigged up a fish and had some bone constraints, so it's all floppy, and he attached that to the point, so it looks like this cool floppy fish.
Oh my
and
gosh.
it made it way cooler. So
Okay, that's super fun.
yeah,
Plus,
Yeah.
dragon's got to be carnivorous. You can't be feeding it fruit.
yeah, that was another point she brought up.
Have a leaf. This is how you get eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a friendly dragon. Yeah.
So let's keep it that way. Let's keep it friendly. Yeah, I like that, and just the little idle blowing flames, just because I don't know, because I can.
He's
So
gotta.
fun.
It's a dragon. You gotta
Right?
put all the dragon into all the animations.
It's very true. How about you, Pete?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna say making a dragon as well,
It's valid.
right? But also just working with Brian was really fun because we sat like right next to each other, and like when we were trying to figure out the wing scale and all that stuff, it was pretty hilarious because we're just like changing it on the screen.
Now make it tiny.
It was pretty awesome.
Cool.
So-
All right. Do you guys want to talk about those? We
Sure.
have 2 questions from the forums.
Yeah. It looks like the first one we may have already addressed, talking about the horns.
Yeah. What considerations went into the kind of horns for the sky scale, and
Yeah.
not stabbing the player?
Yeah.
is
Technical
important
mix of like technical animation concerns with the various races that could be sitting on them and the size that those various races could appear at, and then also something that fits the kind of character that we're trying to go with, that is unique but still classical, cool looking but not necessarily evil looking. And then the second question there, are the similarities between the appearance of the sky scale and the Griffin intentional, or a byproduct of them sharing the same rig? So yes and no, a bit of both. There are some things that we probably would have done no matter what, such as say the scale of the dragon, trying to keep that in line with the other mounts. The other mounts are more or less the size they're at to fit various players, but also to try and like put somewhat of a gate on how much clipping with the environment we want to allow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we probably would have made it a hexapod, that's like a 6-limbed dragon, rather than a wyvern, which is like a 4-limbed dragon, probably no matter what, because we wanted that kind of classical Western dragon body type, which lends it, of course, to looking somewhat like the griffin when it's running around on the ground. And where we really tried to differentiate those two is how their play styles and how they animate and fly around when they're in the air.
Okay. How about you guys? Or did Kate cover it?
I mean, this is something we kind of do all the time.
Yeah.
This is a very common practice in video games. Is fitting something else onto something else, because you don't have all the time in the world to make every single thing you want to make. So there's plenty of games, and our game as well, where you have a slight constraint of fitting a thing onto a skeleton, but we get away with such crazy things on skeletons that you wouldn't even be able to notice if it weren't for like super iconic animations that you see. So while it is on the Griffin wig, I think we did a great job of making it still feel unique.
Oh, I completely agree. And that's something that we've talked about on the show before, as far as using existing rigs for things. You could, like, painstakingly handcraft every tiny thing from scratch just for the sake of painstakingly handcrafting every tiny thing from scratch. But I feel like nothing would ever get done.
Yeah, I'd spend like, I'd have like custom, if I could wave a magic wand and like hire a bunch more people, we'd have like custom rigs and custom animations for absolutely everything. But we probably would never ship any content.
But you would have a really good time. You
Yeah.
would not. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for spending the time with us. I appreciate it. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add about the Griffin? Look, or the sky scale. You could also add it about the sky scale. I really
Or any amounts. I'll just add.
Yeah, you can talk about the
Yeah.
raptor if you want to.
Yeah. I think between this and the last guild chat covered all the
Yeah,
information I have at the top of my head.
We got to talk about that a lot.
Hmm.
All right, sweet. Well, thank you all, and Kate got to learn what an automaton is.
And what was it? An automaton?
Automaton. Look, it's the brand name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually a thing. So,
All right.
thank you all for spending some time with us. Thank you all for spending some time with us and asking your questions about the sky scale and letting us speak to it a little bit.
Mhm.
So, all right, we will see you all in the next guild chat.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.